Good evening to you. I'm Ashley Rowe from 7 Eyewitness News, bringing you special coverage of the protests happening in downtown Buffalo. You can see Mayor Byron Brown is addressing the media. We want to bring you the very latest. Let's listen in.
Protesters, the protest was peaceful. Things then turned. Windows were broken at the Statler. Protesters turned their attention to the federal courthouse and pelted Buffalo police, Erie County sheriffs, New York State police, and federal law enforcement with rocks and bottles. The police showed tremendous professionalism. Law enforcement showed tremendous professionalism and held their positions. The protesters then were asked to disperse. They moved down Niagara Street, and now we have seen situations of looting and vandalism on Niagara Street and on Grant Street. The protesters are still on the move, and the police are trying to disperse them. My message to the community, those who are still protesting from the city of Buffalo, is to go home. There are people who are here in this community that are not from this community, and their intent is to create violence and mayhem. One person was already pulled out of a vehicle by the alleged protesters and was beaten. I still don't have an update on the injuries of that individual. We also know that on the west side of Buffalo, there was a shooting and that person was not shot by law enforcement. So this is a situation that is becoming violent. The county executive and I have been in touch with the governor's office at the highest level. The governor has offered assistance to the city of Buffalo and to Erie County. We have accepted that assistance to ensure that we are able to restore order in our community and make sure that our residents are safe. I now want to turn things over to County Executive Poloncarz.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, and I want to thank all members of law enforcement and Mayor Brown's team, as well as the teams from Erie County, for the work they've done so far, and I certainly commend law enforcement. They were in a very difficult situation earlier downtown, as the mayor noted, with items that were thrown at them, and as I think we all were watching, whether on TV or elsewhere, the incidents, and thankfully it didn't get any worse downtown, but as the mayor noted, we are aware of a number of incidents. There are splinter groups on the west side of Buffalo right now. And we are also hearing of potential other incidences in the county. Based on the conversations I've had with the mayor, the recommendation of him and his staff, as well as New York State, while we are officially in a state of emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm also issuing a state of emergency with regards to the incidences with the rioting and other types of protesting that's going across our community. And in consultation with the mayor and others, we are implementing a curfew countywide effective 10:30 p.m. If you are on the streets, you are subject to potential arrest. We don't want to arrest average citizens, but we want people to understand that there is a serious incidents that are going on across our community right now. And there are people who are finding themselves in very, very difficult situations, dangerous situations, because they just happen to be driving down a street and coming in, or walking down the street and coming in contact with protesters who have serious violence on their mind. As the mayor noted, the vast majority of the protesters earlier today were peaceful. We expected them to be peaceful, but we also were getting intelligence that there were individuals coming from outside this area who had nothing but violence on their mind. I've been in touch with Monroe County Executive Adam Bello. We believe that there are some splinter groups that actually, I should say groups, where they sent people to Rochester and sent people to Buffalo for the sole purpose of inciting violence. And as we saw earlier today, it was a violent day in downtown Rochester, and County Executive Bello declared a state of emergency, as well as implementing a curfew earlier. We were in a much better position throughout most of the day, but as we note now, in the overnight hours, we have a serious incidents going on in the city of Buffalo, and we're worried about other incidences potentially occurring in Erie County. I've been in touch with other county leaders, town leaders, about what they need to do and what they are worried about. I think we are all very, very disheartened about this situation. We were all, of course, disgusted about what we saw in Minneapolis with the death of George Floyd. We know that an injustice anywhere can certainly threaten justice everywhere, as Dr. King noted. And while we stand with protesters that want to peacefully fight injustice, we will never stand with those who want to incite violence in our community. And that's why I really didn't want to do it, but I have declared a state of emergency effective 10:30 p.m. and a curfew countywide, which will be effective till 7 a.m. 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. We do want people to understand that in most areas of the county it's safe to go out, but there are parts of the county that are not safe, and that you could find yourself in a very dangerous situation if you are unaware of it, just driving into it. As the mayor noted, someone was pulled out of a vehicle and beaten, and there was a shooting on the west side, and while we don't have all the information yet, we know the shooting was not police related. So there's some bad things that are going on in our community right now, and we want everyone mostly to be safe. If you're out, go home. If you're a protester, go home. Now is not the time to continue to show your anger and hurt our community and inflict pain with our fellow community members. We know there are people from outside this area that are creating problems because they want to create problems. Let's not help them do that. Let's allow law enforcement the opportunity to get these people, and let's try to restore some normalcy tomorrow. Thank you.
The county executive and I will now open up for your questions.
Any concerns at Galleria Mall? We've heard some specific concerns of things, either threats at the Galleria Mall or outward concerns.
We have heard of threats at various locations of retail establishments across the community. We know there was an incident at the University Plaza, which I think is the city of Buffalo still, maybe Amherst.
Amherst.
It's okay. It's so close. It's right across from Main Street.
Yep.
And we have heard of issues with regards to malls in general. We've seen that elsewhere. There is a police presence that has been activated in the suburbs at retail establishments, and we want to avoid the incidences that you saw in Minneapolis with retail establishments being looted and burned to the ground. As we know, the people that are doing this are not locals. There may be some individuals that are locals that are involved, but the vast majority, we believe, of the problems are being incited by people from outside the area that came here specifically to cause problems.
Now, those outside groups, I mean, is this law enforcement, with an investigation saying these types of things? I mean, what leads you guys to believe this?
Law enforcement has intelligence and has briefed us that there are people that are in this community from outside the city of Buffalo, outside Erie County, that are contributing to these problems. In fact, that are the ringleaders of inciting violence in this community.
And if I can add, one of the reasons why the U.S. District Courthouse, the Jackson Courthouse, had as many U.S. Marshals inside was because of intelligence that we had received earlier in the day that the Jackson Courthouse, which is mostly glass in the front, engraved with the Constitution of the United States, was going to be a target by some of those who would truthfully rather foment revolution than bring us together.
Can you clarify what you're hearing again about injuries? I know you mentioned the person in the car and then a shooting. Can you clarify anything or how bad those injuries were at this point?
I don't know the nature of the injuries at this point. I have been told by police that the individual that was pulled from the car was beaten pretty badly, had to be transported to the hospital. I don't have an update on the nature of the injuries. On the west side, it was reported that several shots were fired, and they did find an individual that was struck by gunfire. I do not know the condition of that individual at this time. Police did confirm that the individual struck by gunfire the gunfire did not come from law enforcement.
Can you also say, you're saying about assistance from the governor, are you talking about state police, National Guard at this point?
At this point, we're talking about state police that could elevate to the National Guard tomorrow, depending on what we see overnight.
Mayor, do you want to just mention the arrests so far unofficially?
At this point, there have been in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 arrests, as reported by Buffalo Police.
That's one thing. If I can add, one thing that at least heartens us is we're not talking about thousands and thousands of people on the street. There were, as the mayor noted, at least over 1,000, maybe a couple thousand that were down in the original protest. But a lot of those people left, especially when they saw that it was becoming ugly. We're talking about at most hundreds. And unfortunately, there's been some splintering of those groups between being downtown by the courthouse and along other parts of the west side. So we're not talking about thousands and thousands of people like you're seeing in some of the other communities. But it doesn't take a whole lot. It could take 10 or 15 people to cause significant damage in a community. Truthfully, it can take one person if they decided to light something on fire. So we are taking this very seriously. We are the city of good neighbors. We are a community of good neighbors, a county of good neighbors. And I know the vast majority of the people in this community are horrified by what they've seen across the country and what they're seeing in Buffalo tonight. And I think if we stand together, we will get through this as a community.
Any other suburban areas, you mentioned the Galleria Mall, but any other suburban areas that you are concerned about at this point where you've had to raise the police presence?
I think it's fair to say that all police were on guard, regardless of where they are. The ones that are closest to the city of Buffalo are the ones that I think that we believe would be most at risk, such as Tonawanda, Kenmore, Cheektowaga, Amherst, where University Plaza area is, and further down. But all police agencies were, I think, at the highest alert today after what we've seen across the country. Because if you saw some of the things that happened in other parts of the country, while they may have happened in a portion of a region, a metro region, sometimes they happen in a suburb, sometimes they happened in the inner city. So I think it's important that you and everyone knows that the police were activated, and there's probably as much police presence as you will find on the streets right now in Erie County than you will find on any other night, and probably just as much as you would find in an emergency situation such as a blizzard or snowstorm.
At the height of, I'm sorry, finish your thought.
That's fine. Let's go. Go ahead.
Okay. At the height of this in downtown Buffalo, what kind of support did the county provide? I mean, it was mainly the Buffalo Police, the federal marshals, and I know the helicopter was up overhead.
Well, Erie County's Central Police Services was activated. We've had a full contingent down in the Public Safety Building. Our emergency services, Public Works, Sheriff's Office were stationed in the Rath Building and other locations. So we've had a full contingent of law enforcement personnel from Erie County, as well as other agencies that would be appropriate in this situation, like Public Works and Emergency Services, stationed downtown in the Rath Building, in the Public Safety Campus, in the Sheriff's Administration Building. I have to keep on charging my phone because I'm getting lots of texts and phone calls throughout the night from various representatives of county government. And as the mayor noted, we've been in contact throughout the night as well with each other, with the governor's office. And truthfully, if you look at what's happened in around the rest of New York State, from New York City, Albany, Rochester, we've had a much better day. And I think it's because of the preparation and work of law enforcement to ensure what happened in the days elsewhere across New York State, the looting, the fires, didn't happen here. Well, now we're in the night hours, and we were always worried about the nighttime hours because it seems to bring out the worst in people, and we are seeing the worst in some people. But once again, we're not talking about thousands of individuals. We're talking about hundreds that we're aware of, and they have splintered off, and that's causing problems because in smaller groups they can still do a lot of damage.
Let me just building on what County Executive Poloncarz has said. There was tremendous coordination and communication between law enforcement at every level, federal law enforcement, the state police, the Erie County Sheriff's Department, the Buffalo Police, and also other local law enforcement agencies that actually worked with the Buffalo Police to have a presence in the city of Buffalo. As the county executive said, he and I have been in communication throughout the day, and we have been in communication with the governor's office. The protesters that were from this community earlier in the day issued a directive to disperse themselves. And that's when a large amount of the protesters that were from this community actually left the protest. When it began to get later, before night fell, before it got dark, the Buffalo police issued a directive for the remaining protesters to disperse, and that's when they went on the move.
Anyone else?
Just speaking of
Tim?
being on the move, are you getting any intelligence from the police of what's happening at that 7-Eleven on the west side?
Yes. Right now, the protesters are pretty mobile. They are moving quickly on the west side. Just got an update just a few seconds ago that the report of a shooting on the west side is a hoax. No one was shot on the west side, so I just want to correct that. That is very good news. And the protesters have been on Grant Street, they've been on Niagara Street, they've been on Elmwood Avenue, so they're moving pretty quickly now.
That's Elmwood in the
One
Elmwood
or
Village.
two more?
Yes.
So do you foresee like a mass arrest once that 10:30 hits in that group?
More people to go.
The police are asking everybody to go home. We have heard from store owners that they have asked people that they have recognized to go home. Right now, these protesters are, and I will call them rioters at this point, are into stores that are owned by local people. These are not corporate establishments. These are small business people that are trying to build a life and do the things that people are protesting about. Build a better community, build a safer community, and take care of themselves and their families. What's happening now is absolutely wrong. As the county executive said, it's being incited by people who don't live in this community, and the Buffalo police and other law enforcement are doing everything that they can to stop it, and they will make arrests as necessary.
One more if we got
Any
it.
word
Ron?
of fires at this point? Any fires breaking out or anything like that?
Not aware.
Not that we are aware of at this time.
We all good? Thank you, everybody. Updates overnight, we'll let you know.
Okay, Ashley Rowe joining you once again from the 7 Eyewitness News studios. You were just watching Mayor Byron Brown and County Executive Mark Poloncarz giving an update, essentially telling the protesters that have been on the streets of downtown Buffalo since about 4 o'clock this afternoon to go home. They've now enacted a curfew from beginning at 10:30. So in just about 1 minute from now, there is a curfew that is in effect until 7 a.m. tomorrow. That's all due to the looting and the vandalism and stores being broken into. That's really all started to escalate with nightfall. It's all spun off from these protests. Things are frankly getting violent, according to Mayor Brown. Windows are getting broken, people hurling rocks and bottles at police. Someone was beaten, he says, unclear on what the condition of that person is. And he says that a lot of these people who are inciting this violence are from outside of the community. So that is why the county executive has issued a state of emergency and a curfew right across Erie County, because they say that a lot of these people are from not within the city limits and also not within the Erie County limits. Once again, Mayor Byron Brown giving an update. We have crews all dispersed throughout this, bringing you the very latest on social media. And of course, we will bring you all of the very latest details on today's protests and tonight's escalating developments coming up in just about a half hour on 7 Eyewitness News at 11. Thanks for joining us.